there, it's Amy Schmidt, your host of the Fearlessly Facing 50 and Beyond podcast. I am so happy that you have chosen to spend time with me. As a reinvention confidence expert, along with a storyteller, I've shared quite a few things along this journey. But what I've found is the most important info to share are stories. Stories of amazing people, ordinary people, extraordinary people, doing things that are going to inspire you to action. So come and join me in this space because you're going to be inspired. Let's get started. It's our time. Hey there, it's Amy and welcome to this episode. I'm excited for this conversation today. I'm sitting here recording in a whole new spot and I'm looking outside and there is this beautiful layer of white snow surrounding me. It's like I'm enveloped in snow. And even though it's March and I kind of want spring, I want to see those daffodils and that forsythia blooming. In this part of the country where I am, it is still blanketed in this beautiful white snow. So the sun is shining, the sky is bright blue, and after I recorded this interview today, actually, I'm going out on a 3-mile hike. So slapping on the old snowshoes and off I go. So I wanted just to give a little reference to that because, you know, as a confidence expert and someone that really prides themselves on stories around reinvention and confidence and storytelling and really stepping into your power, I wanted to share with you the Mind and Body Confidence course that Kristen Cofield and I have put together. It is one of a kind, and that is true. It is one of a kind. It's the only one out there. And it really takes these two components of wellness and mindset and intertwines them. What is the word I'm looking for? Combines them, because really you need both to be successful, to be confident, to be happy, to be filled with joy, to move through the world with confidence. You have to be healthy. The wellness part for me was a huge struggle. As an entrepreneur and as someone who's doing a million things, I was constantly going and going and going, and what was on the back burner for me was my wellness. And it was starting to creep up. You know, I'm not 20, 30, 40, 50 anymore. I'm in my 50s. And those things start to creep up. I needed to get a hold of my wellness and my journey around wellness and start to really, take care of myself as much as I take care of those around me. So the wellness part for me was a journey. And once I cracked that nut with help from Kristen, because she said, hey, you know what? I need help over here on my mindset confidence and stepping into my power, but I can really help you here with your wellness. And that's exactly what this course is about. You're going to build daily habits around wellness that you can incorporate every day. You can treat yourself as a guest of honor, like I like to say, around your wellness. And then you can step into your power and share your story. And you know what? Feel exuberant and joyful and confident and move through the world with that feeling is great. So when you have that combo of mindset and wellness confidence together, you're unstoppable. So I encourage you to check out the course. It's a 14-day course. It's so much fun. There's a video every day that takes you, 5-10 minutes to listen to. And it takes you on that journey and incorporating that daily habit of what you need to do around your wellness and mindset to move through the world with confidence. So check it out. You can purchase the course, and it is an inexpensive course. I have taken a lot of courses over the years, and you know what? This one is priced for you to be treated as a guest of honor. It's an investment. It's $197, and it will get you on track for this spring season of feeling your best confident self. So check it out. You can purchase it on my website, which is fearlesslyfacing50.com. 50 is spelled out. You can go to betterthangossip.com and check out everything over there that we have done. We've got a stream TV show. We've got this course to offer you. We've got so many great incentives from women-owned brands. So go and check it out. So go to betterthangossip.com and sign up for the Mind and Body Confidence course. So now let's transition into this fabulous guest we have today, who is the host of a wonderful retreat coming up. And thanks to my editor, Alex, for pushing this thing out right away because we knew we had to skew the schedule a little bit and drop this one. She's having a fantastic retreat in Texas. I'm going to list all of the links so that you can get your spot. I think there's only 4 spots left. So this will be the first of many retreats that they have, but it really is a fabulous time for you to treat yourself as a guest of honor, which is so important. So check it out. It'll be listed in the episode notes. And now, without further ado, I would love to introduce you to a superhuman, a wonderful and just insightful woman who is a physician and who has a wellness center focused on midlife wellness. And you know what? She walks the walk and she talks the talk, and she's so knowledgeable. So sit back, relax, grab a pencil or a pen or something to jot down some notes, because she has a lot of great tips in here about how to manage this phase of life, whether you're perimenopausal, menopausal, or postmenopausal. Welcome to the show, Dr. Susan Hardwick-Smith. Well, welcome to the show today. You know, I always start out by saying I'm excited, and I am excited about this. And I'm also very intrigued because we're going to learn today from Dr. Susan Hardwick-Smith. We're just going to call her Susan, if that's okay, because otherwise it's just too much.
It's way too much.
It's way too much. And it's early here while recording. I'm on my first cup of coffee. We're going to talk a little bit about the challenges, some of the questions that come up as we navigate this journey through midlife, and what midlife really is, because it certainly has changed, right? Because we're living longer. So Susan, welcome to the show. I'm excited to have you here and just kind of tap into your wisdom for a little bit and share some inspiration with the listeners all over the world.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to share what I've learned about menopause. And it all really started when I went through menopause myself. So wow, what a great way to learn, to go through it yourself. So I think I'm an expert both as a patient and as a physician, which gives me a unique perspective, I think, from both sides.
It really does. And I think that's so important because, you know, when you talk the talk and you walk the walk, it's just that authenticity is there and you've lived it and you know the struggles, the challenges, and some of the excitement that goes with this phase of life. So I want to start, you know, we talk a lot about menopause. We hear about menopause a lot now. When I launched this in 2019, just before turning 50, you know, I was afraid to use that word. I said it openly on a panel I navigated and a few weeks ago. And I said, you know, I hesitated saying menopause. The word actually kind of made me think, oh man, that sounds old to me.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much left over in our culture from our mother's generation. I think about my mom, who's in her 80s and went through menopause with the instructions to not talk about it to anybody. Don't complain, just go in your room and dry your eyes, but by all means, don't complain. That was what we were taught. And so as a result, I think women, especially in our generation, I'm 55, have a little bit of that left over, that there's a shame element associated with it, or certainly no one wants to talk about it. This is just an awful thing that you deal with on your own. And by all means, don't let anyone know that you're suffering. And so that's led to generations of women, I think, feeling alone and helpless and something's wrong with me because we haven't been comfortable sharing it with each other. But now we can share each other's stories and be like, me too. Oh, you had that too. Oh my gosh. I mean, there's so much healing just in that normalizing and understanding that we're not alone. And then the next step, of course, moving forward to what we can do about it, because there's so much we can do about it. There's no reason to not feel better at 55. And I can tell you for sure that I actually do than when I was.
Amazing. You look fabulous. I'm 53. Well, I think our 50s is one of the best clubs around. I love it when my friends turn 50. I'm like, you are getting into the best club there is.
I totally agree. And I did not think that when I was younger. My 18-year-olds, for example, still think 55 is geriatric, but you know, we're not. I mean, I still feel young. There's so much more life to live. And and we can have a great health span. We can have great energy and all of the things that we had when we were younger. It's just not true that needs to disappear. So glad we can talk about it these days, or we're starting to at least.
So take me back to medical school, because, you know, when we think about that path, and here you are, OBGYN, one of the most difficult, I think. I have friends that are OBGYNs, and think about those days when you were young. Did you ever think at that point, you know, menopause was something that really should have been in that curriculum, that should have been talked about more?
Oh, gosh. So looking back, it's shocking how little education physicians received, even in a gynecologic residency. So one would think that if you're looking for an expert in menopausal wellness, that you could ask your gynecologist. I mean, who else would you ask, right? But in fact, they've been taught zero, nothing. There's no teaching whatsoever. Now, I graduated almost 25 years ago, but it hasn't changed much. The Women's Health Initiative study in 2002 sort of put a stop to everything to do with education about menopause because we thought there wasn't anything that could be done. So the great majority of gynecologists, unless they've taken some extra steps to educate themselves and become experts in this field, really don't know anything. In fact, some of your listeners, and certainly you, probably know much more than your gynecologist does. So it's
isn't that incredible?
I mean, back in med school and even in gynecologic residency, we were learning how to deliver babies and do hysterectomies and manage pathology in a different manner. I mean, there was no emphasis on just wellness, I mean, at all.
Right.
So yeah, thank goodness that's starting to change. But yeah, shocking lack of education from physicians. And many of your listeners have probably experienced going to talk to a gynecologist and, being pretty much dismissed, like, oh, well, that's just normal. Put up with it. You're just getting older.
Exactly.
That's it. Or here's an antidepressant and some sleeping pills and off you go.
And off you go. Off you go. I'm going to link to this too, the episode and the episode notes. You had a great conversation with Stacey London, who I love. Stacey's been on my show a couple of times, and you have a great conversation and you really dig into that study. And so I love it. I listened to it this morning. So I'm going to link that. So those listening now, take a listen to that when you have some time. Now I want you to take me to your practice today and what you do and where your heart and passion really is. And what really sparked this? Did you have patients coming in and asking you questions that you kind of went home and said, man, I gotta research. I gotta dig into this more. I'm passionate about this.
Yeah, well, so as I mentioned, and I'm sort of guilty to say this, I did not have a passion about menopause until I went through it myself. I probably was dismissive to patients just in the manner that I described because I had no understanding of what a life-changing event it could be. So I think I was a pretty arrogant young physician, just thinking that I knew everything until I was hit with perimenopausal symptoms that just knocked me over when I was about 45. And realized that the advice that I'd been giving people just wasn't sufficient. I couldn't heal myself, let alone another patient. And actually retired from a really big general OB-GYN practice that I'd spent my whole career growing in 2020. So 3 years ago, decided just to focus on midlife wellness because there's such a gap in care I'm in Houston, one of the biggest cities in the country. And, maybe there are 2 or 3 people here who practice in this field. It's very, very limited. But I can tell you, even as a physician, I know patients experience this frustration, but I shared it as the physician. When we have 10 or 15 minutes to talk to a patient, just because that's what insurance allows, it's just not enough, to dig into any of this stuff. So a visit with me takes an hour or more sometimes. And this is all we're talking about. So it's such a beautiful change that I can talk to 6 or 7 women a day instead of 40 or 50 and actually really dig into what's going on with her life from a holistic point of view, like all of it, from head to toe, sexual wellness, hormonal wellness, not just regular medical care, which is important, but, lifestyle, balance, spiritual life, all of the things like
incredible
relational wellness. Yeah, and I needed that. So coming back to how I got it, I needed it myself. So I had to find a way to heal myself. And then now I'm able to use that same plan that I feel great and try to share that with other women.
I think that's incredible. I got goosebumps just one thinking about 2020 and launching this and shifting and making that at such a time.
Yeah, that was a weird time to start a new business. Yeah.
Unbelievable. And it took courage. And I think for people listening, that it takes courage, but it also just shows that you have such a passion about what you're doing and you're willing to take that extra time with these women and you're willing to engage in conversation. And that's where we build that trust. So often, like you said, you get rushed and you go into your physician and you have these questions in your mind, but then something gets sidetracked and you don't ask. And
right, and the questions are not welcomed. And I know that from the other side, like being a busy gynecologist and you've sort of got your hand on the door about to leave and you've got 6 patients waiting and you're an hour behind. And then the patient might say, doctor, I wanted to talk about my libido is gone. And the doctor is thinking, oh, geez, I don't have time to talk about this right now. Right. So the whole situation is set up not to be able to take care of those really important things. I mean, it's really a sad situation. So, but there are other options, which is great.
Exactly.
And people are starting to talk about it more because it is so important. And if one is not someone who's, a confident woman with a lot of very assertive, probably you're just going to stop right there, and be dismissed and go home and say, oh, well, I guess the doctor said there's nothing I can do. And unfortunately, women who don't take that next step and say, you know what, I think that didn't sound right. I need to ask more questions. I need to seek out more information.
Right.
She's going to get help, but that's a tough thing to ask people to do. I mean, not
It
everyone's
is.
comfortable questioning
Exactly.
a doctor and asking more
Exactly.
questions. And
Mm.
we're in the middle of something beautiful where it's starting to expand, but we're still, early on.
Yeah. Michelle Obama said recently, and I mentioned it on one of the conversations I just had with a group of experts, was the fact that, when you reach this stage of life, it's actually something to celebrate because you've made it this far. And I think that was those words always, they resonate with me because you think every day is such a gift and you've made it this far and we can get through it because there are solutions and there are people like you that are out there that actually embrace this time of life and don't, and we don't have to look at it with dread, but with anticipation and with, wow, we made it this far. I'd like to talk a little bit about perimenopause because I think menopause, a lot of women that are in that or have gone through that and now are at that phase. There's this whole little, I don't know what you would even call it, this area, like you started at 45. I think my perimenopause is still going at 53. Let's talk about that because there's an array of symptoms, right? Well beyond hot flashes and sleepless nights, which is kind of, those two things that maybe if your husband or spouse or partner is listening, they're like, oh, she gets hot flashes. She's in menopause, but there's so much more than that.
Yeah. So when I talk to patients, I sort of explain it this way, in a very high level manner. There's that time of life when we're young and fertile and we're having regular periods. And I realize that's not the case for everyone. Let's just pretend we had normal periods every 28 to 30 days and our hormones were fluctuating up and down in a nice, manageable manner. That's one phase of life. And then on the other hand, there's a point when we stop producing hormones altogether, and that would be menopause. And those two are both fairly well described and understood. But perimenopause is that time in between where, okay, I'm still producing hormones. I'm still ovulating sometimes. Estrogen, progesterone, testosterone are still present, but the levels are very unpredictable, to say the least. And perimenopause is characterized by these hugely fluctuating ups and downs. So we can literally I felt like I was going crazy, like maybe I had bipolar disorder that runs on my mother's side of the family, or I even thought maybe I had Alzheimer's or a brain tumor. It was just inconceivable to me, even as a specialist, that this could just be hormonal change. And as you alluded to, some of the symptoms are just treated almost as a joke, like, oh, she's just having her period, or oh, she's just being hormonal, or it's just like it's almost it's so dismissive. And even as a specialist, as I mentioned, when I had those symptoms, was sure it couldn't just be menopause because they were so debilitating. I mean, not just sleeplessness and hot flashes, like you mentioned, but mood swings, weight changes, memory loss, joint pain. I mean, so many things changed. On the flip side, now that I'm postmenopausal and my hormones are the same every day, I feel fantastic. But yes, that time in between is often dismissed. And, frequently doctors will even check your hormones and say, oh, your hormones look fine. You must be fine. So maybe you just need a psychologist or something like that, because it's not recognizing that there's so much fluctuation. If I checked your hormones today versus next week, they'd be completely different. So perimenopause is a real passion of mine because I suffered so much with it. And there's so many things that we can do to mitigate those symptoms. And, one of the most important things I think is just letting a patient know that, hey, you're not crazy. I felt that way too. Yeah, those are all symptoms that a lot of my patients share. So you're not crazy. And let's see what we can do to help you feel better. Because it is a very easy time to dismiss. We don't go directly from having perfect hormones to being menopausal. There's a huge gap in between for most women. It could be years.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so interesting. And I love the fact that you say, it's one of those things where you kind of just take your hand out from underneath your leg and you say, yeah, that's me too. Like I'm experiencing that. And there are an array of symptoms. So when they go into your wellness center, when a patient comes and sees you, what can they expect on that first visit with that first conversation with you? Do you just kind of go through a checklist of things to see where they are, or, what takes place?
And I'm always very aware that the services I offer are not available to everybody. I mean, wouldn't it be great if everybody could afford to have a concierge doctor to meet with for an hour? So as I say this, I recognize that it's not something that everybody has access to. However, if money grew on trees, yes, you would have a big, extensive lab panel done before your first visit, and then come in and sit down for an hour or more and go through your individual situation. We have a checklist of every symptom under the sun so that we can dig into what's actually going on with you, and then talk through, your particular situation, along with lab work, of course, which I think is very important, right. And then come up with a individualized plan that's structured to help you feel better. Because even though we're similar, and perimenopause has similarities for every woman, there's also subtle differences that we have to take into account. So it's not a one size fits all thing. So after formulating that plan, whatever it may be, and it might involve hormonal replacement, it might involve nutritional change, movement, some stress lowering things, meditation, all kinds of things, gut inflammation protocols. I mean, there's a lot of different pieces, and then, put together a plan and of course, follow up on it. Right. And I think, having a place where you can send me an email if you have a question, or call my nurse and get someone to answer the phone right away. It does create a sisterhood, really, where you're supported and don't feel like you've fallen through the cracks, which is so lovely for me too, exactly, as a provider, but for patients as well.
That sense of community is so important for women. Mm-hmm. I always like to circle back. I had put out to my community at Fearlessly Facing 50 that I was going to have you on the show. And I like to take a question. And Sandy, actually, who lives in North Dakota, sent in a question I think that you'll appreciate. She said, what should women ask for when having their hormone levels checked? She was recently into her physician. Now, I don't know if it was an OB or an internist or family practice, but she didn't know how to ask that question. How do I get my hormones checked? What are you supposed to be asking for? I thought that was a great question. So I wanted to interject that.
It is a great question. And it speaks to the fact that most doctors are not going to offer this to you, because it just frustrates me that someone like Sandy and so many women have to think about, how am I going to get this done? And really it should be the physician's job to advise you, first of all. But given that we're not living in a perfect world, we do have to advocate for ourselves. Many doctors, and I was trained this way, traditional training would suggest that there's no point in checking hormones. I was trained that way. Don't have to check hormones. You can ask the patient, and the patient's symptoms will tell you exactly what her hormones are. And that's baloney. I mean, there's so many things that I find on a hormone panel that surprise me all the time, where someone might seem to be postmenopausal when they really are not, or other things are going on that otherwise we wouldn't know. So asking your doctor for a hormone panel is unfortunate, because they should offer it to you in the first place. But if you think about, your internist checks your cholesterol, diabetes screening, kidney, liver function, all of those things are routine. Why on earth should we be, wondering why our hormone status is something that's right, inappropriate to ask for or to check? I think one of the reasons is that most doctors don't know how to interpret the results. And I hate to say that, but they're not going to order a test when they don't know how to interpret the results. And
exactly.
I know that's the case for many people. So finding the right provider, I think, would be the first step. One resource is the North American Menopause Society website, which is menopause.org. I always tell people, to be a member of the North American Menopause Society, you just have to write a check and they can be a member. So being a member, it doesn't indicate they have much education, but there's a higher level called a North American Menopause Society practitioner. So NAMP, that would be someone like me and others. And that could be a great resource to find someone who at least has done some higher level education in this field. So look for someone. If you find the right person, you shouldn't have to ask. Right. Really. And if they're not offering it to you, chances are they wouldn't know how to interpret the results anyway, which is sad.
That is unbelievable. Thank you, Sandy, for sending that in. But that's unbelievable. And I think you're probably right. That makes perfect sense. I went into a physician recently, my normal internist actually, and I needed to have some blood work done. And, I had to ask to have vitamin D done. Now that was something new. Maybe it was just in the state I was in, but I was like, oh my gosh, I lived in Europe for a long time with our family, and they always checked vitamin D. We were always a little deficient in that, our whole family. And I had to ask for that, which was interesting. So you really have to advocate for these things. And Susan just said, find the right person. So thank you for addressing that. And thank you, Sandy, for sending that in. Let's transition in these last few minutes to this wonderful event that you have coming up. It's your inaugural retreat. And a little shout out to Alex, who's editing this for me today, because we want to drop this one before this thing fills up. You have a few spots left, but it sounds amazing. So walk us through that.
Yes. Yeah. So just back to the spirit of the magic that happens when women get together and share their stories. I'm a host, along with several other women, of a retreat we're calling Empowering Midlife Wellness. It's at Miraval, Austin, which, if you're familiar with the Miraval brand, is just fabulously.
Oh, that's off the charts. Fabulous.
For a retreat.
Oh, you need to sign up now, ladies.
Right.
Oh, my gosh.
It's gorgeous. And the retreat is May 5th through the 8th. So 3 days of all women in midlife, myself and several other amazing speakers that all celebrate midlife from different angles. Life coach, a functional medicine expert, lots of people who are, and you can look at the link below. But the point of getting together, I think, is just so important, just as we were speaking about, to normalize what we're going through, share our stories, make new friends, make connections, and then come up with solutions that can be helpful, whether it's hormones, which I specialize in, whether it's nutrition from a functional medicine point of view, whether it's life coaching. We have a conscious life coach who's going to be there, whether it's style, what do we wear when we're over 50? Dominique Sachs is a very well-known style expert. He'll be there sharing, just lots of different things. So we do have a few spots left. We have 30 guests. We're limiting it to just that small number so it can remain very intimate. And I think as of yesterday, we have 4 spots left.
Oh, wow.
Just encourage you to come if you feel like being around other women in our age group and sharing stories and getting expertise from various different angles would be helpful for you. I cannot wait. I've been a guest at similar retreats before, but being a host is a new, exciting chapter for me, and we just can't wait. It's going to be amazing.
And I think these events for women too, the nice thing is you don't have to come with a posse. You don't have to come with a friend. You're welcomed and you can walk in and be embraced. And like you said, the power of sharing stories, that's really what I love to do, because there's that common denominator, and that you just weave together this beautiful masterpiece. So I'm going to put it out on stories today too, because there aren't that many spots left, but there'll be retreats after this one as well. So if you can't get into this one, I'm sure there'll be another one, but I applaud you for doing it, because I do think there's such a need, and especially for women to treat themselves as a guest of honor is something I like to say. Treat yourself as that guest of honor. What do you do when you welcome people into your home? You welcome them with kindness and love and gratitude. And so do that for yourself. So thank you for offering that. And I'll definitely post everything so that they can sign up.
I think what you said is so important. Okay, the first thing that most people notice when they look at it is, oh my gosh, that's expensive. I don't deserve that, or some similar sentence. But goodness me, I've got 3 teenagers. I just spent more money than that on spring break for them and all the other things that we do. I mean, at what point am I worth spending time and money on to take a weekend off for myself? And yes, Miraval is expensive. It's a luxurious place, but you're worth it. You deserve it. And if you're leaving transformed with a new way of facing the second half of life, a bunch of new friends, that's kind of priceless. I mean, I've certainly found that when I've been to retreats before. And this isn't a retreat where you're sleeping on a little, 2-inch mattress on the floor. You're at Miraval. So you can have all the luxury that you want.
Exactly. And we deserve it. I say often that you don't have to be the priority of the list every day, but you got to make the list every day. So for those listening,
give yourself a weekend.
Give yourself a weekend. You deserve it. So before we end today, I want to ask you a little bit. I know you're an athlete, and you have a busy schedule. You have teenagers. You have this wonderful wellness center. You're branching off with these retreats, which is amazing. How do you have the time to really take care of yourself, to incorporate running and all of these fantastic things that you do? How do you make that time?
I've been asked that question before, and I've actually never found it a challenge. I think that we have time for the things that are important for us. And so because they're important to me, I don't feel a time crunch. I sleep for 8 hours every night. I mean, I wear the Aura ring, which is amazing. I'm a big fan. Yeah. So I really do sleep for 7 to 9 hours every night. I got a score of 95 last night.
Oh, girl, that's amazing.
I think many of us, certainly most of us, I think, use a lot of our time in ways that are not really lighting us up. If we're watching TV or spending a lot of time on social media or other things, And so I think I just use my time in a very efficient manner because I don't feel time crunched at all. I have plenty of time for all of those things because I think we make the time for things that are important.
Good for you.
And then sleep. I mean, if I'm well rested, I can achieve
Yeah.
twice as much during the day than I could if I was exhausted.
Sleep is so important. And,
yeah.
we scroll through our social media, we start our day doing something like that, and then we're totally off kilter right from the start. So
right, can easily get sucked into that. And I wanted to mention one thing. If anyone is interested in coming to the retreat, I'm doing some breakout sessions where you could meet with me one-on-one, bring a hormone panel. I could get that ordered for you before you come. So I'm offering that to people that don't have an opportunity to do that in their local area, because I'll know who you are. We can get your labs ordered. You can meet with me. We could do a consultation at the retreat. I mean, there's so many different opportunities that we have to get suck the wisdom out of these amazing women who are going to be there, not just the speakers, but also the other guests. I mean, everybody has something to offer, including you. If you're listening, you have something to offer that could change somebody else's life.
Yes.
A story, an experience, and the whole thing just evolves. If those of you have been to a retreat, you don't know what it's going to be like because it depends on the people who were there. You create a masterpiece, as you said.
You do.
We need
I wish I could be there. I am so bummed. I'm going to miss this one. I really do. Yeah, I've got 3 of my kids flying in to run a half marathon that weekend. So
yay, that's exciting.
Yeah. So I'll be on mom duty. Last question I want to ask before you leave is something I ask everyone. And that is, Susan, if you're sitting on the couch and you look over and there's Susan at 30, what advice would you give her?
Oh my goodness, Susan at 30 needed so much advice. I think this is actually something that one of my daughters gave a speech about yesterday. I would tell her that life is uncertain and not to be so sure about everything, that it's okay to have uncertainty and to move into areas where you don't need to see the whole staircase to take the first step. I was very sure of everything when I was 30, that I knew right from wrong and black from white. And that really is much more subtle than that. So just to embrace uncertainty, I think, is such a great piece of learning that I'm still working on. Not to be afraid to step into areas where you don't necessarily know what the outcome is going to be. But if it draws you in that direction, just to go for it, listen to your heart. And if 30-year-old Susan had done that, I probably would have got to here, but maybe a bit quicker.
Yeah. Interesting. Right. Thank you for sharing that. I love it. Yeah. Use your resources, ask for help, go to this fantastic retreat, surround yourself with others that are going to lift you up. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this, and I look forward to a post-retreat interview at some point.
Yes, I can't wait. Well, it's so nice to talk to you and your listeners. And I know you'll put some links below as to how they can reach me if they want to. But I'm just thrilled to be offering, any type of education about this time of life to anyone who wants it, because you deserve it. You deserve it. Being over 50 does not mean it's not a death sentence. It's the best part of life, as you said. So
exactly. Thank you so much.
All right. Great to see you. Take care.
Okay, so I hope that this episode inspired you, encouraged you, and challenged you. Because when we share our stories, they're inspiring. You know what? It's important for people to connect. Connection is key. People need people. So as you go forward this week or today, be a difference maker, be a change maker, not only in your life, but in somebody else's. Reach out with a text, an email, or a phone call. Connection is key. It builds community and it builds confidence. Go forth and be awesome, and I'll see you soon.